Okay, good afternoon. I would like to, actually, Hobie, you're calling us to order, right?
However you want to do it, you can call it. You want me to do it?
That's on you.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Hobie Lehman, clerk with the Senate Clerk's Office. We'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Senator Locke, Senator Hashmi, Delegate Runyon, Delegate Williams Graves, Delegate Munden King, Robert Hamlin, Karen Sanders, Joan Cobbs, Joy Speaks, Bishan Luck. Senator Locke, we do have a quorum. We will start with election of the chair. I will now open the floors for nominations of chair. Do we have any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Senator Locke for chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? I will now close the nominations. We will vote on the nominee. All those in favor of Senator Locke as chair, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Senator Locke, you are the chair, and I will gladly turn this over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Hobie. We will now open up the floor for the nomination of a vice chair. Don't all speak at once.
I nominate Delegate Candy Munden King as vice chair.
Second.
Any further nominations? Okay, we will close the nominations on Delegate Munden King. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, congratulations, Delegate Munden King. Okay, with that, we will, starting on my far left, we would like to have all members introduce themselves and tell us who you are and where you're from for the board.
I'm Robert Hamlin from Prince Edward County, or you may know Farmville. It's been in the news a lot recently. Fortunately, the last of the two prisoners turned themselves in at Longwood yesterday. So we can feel comfortable that everything is okay.
Okay, great, thank you, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Karen Neely Sanders. I am a native of Hampton, Virginia, but I've been in Blacksburg, Virginia, working there for about 22 years now.
You barely look 22. Good afternoon. I'm Delegate Angela Williams Graves. I represent the 90th House District in the Commonwealth of Virginia. That is Norfolk and a little bit of Virginia Beach.
Hi, I'm Mamie Locke. I represent the 23rd Senate District, which is the cities of Hampton and Newport News.
Good afternoon. I'm Candy Munden King, representing the 2nd District in the House of Delegates, which includes Prince William County and Stafford County.
Good afternoon. My name is Joan Cobbs, and I am from South Hampton, New Jersey, and I used to live in
Hampton Heights, Virginia. Thank you and welcome, everyone. Our next item of business is to adopt an electronic meeting policy, and that's the gray sheet that's in your folder. And Lily Jones will review this policy, after which we will need to vote on adopting this policy.
Hi, I'm Lily Jones with Legislative Services. The gray sheet in your folder is a policy that will allow for electronic meetings. There's a new provision of the Freedom of Information Act that went into effect September 2022 that allows for virtual participation in committee meetings if the committee first adopts a virtual meeting policy. So that's what this is. I can go through what it would allow if you'd like. Individuals would be able to participate remotely at in-person meetings, provided there's an in-person quorum. And it would also allow for the committee to meet entirely virtually, with the one condition being that you can't have 2 consecutive virtual meetings. So the committee doesn't have to adopt a policy, but that's the only way you can sometimes meet virtually.
Are there any questions about this policy?
My question is with regard to Section 1, Part B, where it references 25% of the meetings held per calendar year rounded up to the next whole number. Should a meeting have to be canceled, I don't know, due to inclement weather or, for some other reason, does that count negatively against the person who may need to participate remotely?
If a meeting doesn't happen at all, then it wouldn't count as an absence.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? If not, then we need a motion to adopt this policy.
I make a motion that we adopt the policy for electronic meetings.
Second.
It's moved and seconded that we adopt a policy for electronic meetings. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, then that policy is adopted. Lily, you can stay right there. Because the next is the staff report that will give us an overview on the current status of the Brown program.
Yes, so this committee is meeting for the first time since 2019. So even if you have been on it previously, you might need a little refresher on what it does and what it's been doing the past few years. The committee started to administer the program and fund. It was created by legislation in 2004 for the purpose of awarding scholarships to Virginians who couldn't attend public schools between 1954 and 1964 in the jurisdictions where the schools were closed to avoid desegregation. So those 5 jurisdictions were Charlottesville, Arlington, Norfolk, Warren County, and Prince Edward County. The program began with a $50,000 appropriation from the state for the fund at the very beginning. Shortly thereafter, a private donor, John Kluge, offered $1 million toward the fund if the state would match that donation, which the state did. So that gave the fund just over $2 million to start with. The very first scholarships were awarded in the 2005-2006 academic year. And since that time, scholarship funds have been dispersed to 88 individual students using just over $1 million or a little more than half of what's in the fund. There's actually a green packet in your folder that goes through all of the expenditures over the whole history of the program and shows you where the fund is now. Currently, there are 2 students enrolled in the program receiving scholarship funds. Both have anticipated completion dates around 2024. Through the end of the last academic year, $989,185 remained in the fund. So the committee last met in 2019, which is when the last new student was accepted into the program. In 2020, 2021, 2022, there were no new applicants for the program. So the committee hasn't had to meet to consider new applicants. They've just continued on renewal scholarships. This year, we have those same 2 renewal applicants, but we also do have 1 new applicant under the original criteria of the scholarship. So that'll come up next in closed session. But before that, there's the latest and the biggest development in the scholarship program happening this year, which is after the passage of Delegate Corey's HB 1419 and Senator McClellan's SB 1498, which were signed by the governor and will go into effect on July 1st. The bills extend eligibility for the scholarship to descendants of anyone who is currently eligible. The language of the law specifies lineal and collateral descendants, so that will mean children, grandchildren, but also nieces and nephews of any generation. So it's an enormous expansion of the applicant pool. Currently, anyone eligible under the original criteria is in the age range of about 65 to 85, so this is really going to open it up. So the committee's work this year is going to be in large part to determine how to plan and promote and implement the expansion. And an initial discussion on that is on the agenda for a little later.
Okay. Any questions regarding where we are to date?
Do they still have to be residents of the state?
They do, that's in the statute, so the law would have to change in order for that to change.
Any other questions?
I do have one question. You just said
Could you
that
speak
they-
into, we have to speak into the mic.
Turn that on. Okay. Thanks, Ms. Johnson. So the question about residency, does the residency in the Commonwealth apply to the applicants who were directly impacted, those who were forced out of the school, or does the residency only require, does it extend to the descendants?
It extends, it's for the original, anyone originally eligible and also for the descendants, so it applies to everyone.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thanks, Lily. Okay. We now are down to agenda item number 6, where we will address the 2023-2024 scholarship applicants. We will have to go into executive session in order to do that. So, Angela, if you could make the motion for us to go into executive session, please.
I move that we convene an executive session pursuant to subdivision 37 of chapter 2.2-3711 to discuss and consider matters pertaining to the Brown v. Board of Education Scholarship Program excluded from public discussion under this section.
Okay, need a second? Okay, all those is this a roll call or it can be verbal? Okay, okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All right, those opposed, okay. Since this is executive session, it has to be us only, okay.
Madam Chair, I do have a question about further clarification about the residency piece, because I'm
think mine's overkill.
Oh,
Okay.
I move that we close the executive session and reconvene in open meeting and certify that only those matters permitted under subdivision 37 of section 2.2-3711 were discussed by the committee in executive session.
Second.
All those in favor of this motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you also for your patience. All right, we are now back in open meeting. And so all those in favor of awarding 3 scholarships as discussed, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, thank you. We can move forward on those. Okay. We're now down to agenda item number 7, discussing implementation of expanded eligibility. That is on the yellow gold sheets that are in your folder. Let me find. Okay. Okay, and this has to do with the legislation that was just recently passed that extends the eligibility to descendants, and the decisions that we have to make as a committee is what year do we want to begin awarding scholarships to descendants? We can possibly begin 2023, 2024. That would give us a very tight timeline, however. Chev indicates that it would likely not be able to make disbursements until after the start of the fall term. Do we want to cap the number of new students we accept into the program, cap the amount dispersed per student? For example, 10 students per year capped at $20,000 per student, or 20 students per year capped at $10,000 per students. That would amount to $200,000 a year and would deplete our existing funds in less than 5 years. We cover full tuition, and so, or do we want to award smaller scholarships to a larger number of students? Basically, given the new legislation, what do we want to do?
I do have a question.
Yes.
Considering how slow it's been since the scholarship's inception, do we really want to be real concerned about capping the scholarship annually?
My question would be, do we know how many descendants we're talking about?
Madam Chair, we do not know, probably thousands, and I will say that I've had a lot of interest as staff from people who want to know more about the program, who are younger, college age, and would like to apply for the scholarship. So it's probably going to be, they could have a lot of interest.
Delegate.
Madam Chair, and this is a question really for staff. Is there a way to look at need-based as we consider descendants?
Madam Chair, we can amend the policies in any way we'd like, and we can absolutely make that part of the criteria.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Delegate Williams-Graves.
Thank you. I like the idea of, I do like the idea of capping, just so that we can, like a smaller cap, so that we can help a maximum number of students. I think 10,000 a year to be able to get to 20 students, as opposed to the example of 20,000 and only 10 students. And I also like having a need-based. But the other thing too is we have shortages in our workforce. And so is there a way that we could look at specific degrees or degree programs or shortage areas that we have shortages of in the labor force, to incent those individuals to apply for the scholarship? Because sometimes people may not know what the shortages are and that those options are available to them. And so that could be a way for us to help push some people into areas where we need them.
What happens in that scenario if they change their major along the way? Are they no longer eligible?
That's a good question. Madam Chair,
Yeah.
I would say that we could we have the ability to make the rules for the program. And just like, I know when I was in school as an adult, if you didn't maintain, and we got employee reimbursement, you had to maintain a certain grade point average, or you had to pay the money back. And I don't want to add insult to injury, on anyone, but there's criteria for everything. And all money has strings attached. And so if they change their major and maybe it's outside of one of those fields that is required in here, then I would suggest that they become ineligible.
I think that at this point, we changed the law. So, and I think that because we have now changed the law, we need to establish the criteria for how we want this scholarship to be awarded going forward. And given that we don't know how many people there are out there who now may be eligible for awarding the scholarship to, I think we need to determine what that criteria is going to be. Because previously there was a finite number at some point. Now we don't know that. And given that we don't know what that number is right now, we have got to establish some criteria that this is what is required of an individual to now be eligible for the scholarship. And because the money is not finite.
Right.
So I've heard, need-based. I've heard workforce, eligibility.
And a cap.
So,
And Madam Chair.
there's a start.
Yeah. I just wanted to lift up from Ms. Vera Morton, who was directly impacted, and highlight one of her suggestions. And this may be a question for Mr. Hamlin or Ms. Cobbs about the number of people who were directly impacted who are still, may be in need. I would like to see us consider a percentage of the fund set aside just for those directly impacted. And then perhaps put in their children, as Ms. Morton identified in her recommendation, that their children were deeply impacted as well by their parents' interruption of their education. So perhaps we can look at a percentage or a pool of funds and then look at maybe caps and need-based for grandchildren and future descendants.
I like that.
I have seen a figure that I don't really know how accurate it is, but it was estimated that 3,600 students were affected by the school closure, 1959 to 64.
Yes, ma'am.
Click your button, push your button.
Okay, the first applicant, Martha.
We can't,
Bailey.
don't call any names.
Oh, I'm sorry. First applicant seemed to have missed school from 1959 to 1964, according to what she has on her application.
Yeah, because we're still dealing with individuals who missed school. So we still have those applicants coming in. We haven't even gotten to descendants.
I thought she was originally,
That's an original.
okay.
So we're still dealing with the 1959 to 1964 pool of applicants.
Well, that's what I thought she
Yeah,
was.
we haven't gotten to descendants.
So, Madam Chair, I
Well-
think there's a little bit of confusion. So what we agreed on was the applicants that we have, they're getting funded. All of those are getting, all those three are getting funded. What we're discussing now is how do we go about creating parameters for those who are actually affected and their descendants, because we added descendants to the statute. So those people are good. Those people are we've already,
yeah,
we're
they're
voted on those, yes, ma'am. They are good, they're getting theirs, but now it's like, now what about everybody else?
Okay,
Right.
I understand.
Madam Chair, so I'd like to propose that we consider setting aside $600,000 for those directly impacted and their children, and then look at criteria for a pot for their future descendants.
Okay.
And I'm open to discussion of that idea.
Any discussion on that idea?
I'm curious, how did you arrive at 600,000?
Well, I was here doing some quick work on my calculator. If we were able to offer to their descendants, to the grandchildren and beyond, 15,000 each, we would be able to reach about 20 or 25 students with 350 to 400,000. And so it's and I'll just be frank, my concern is those who were directly impacted and their children. Being a student of history, seeing what they've gone through, I want to ensure that whoever is eligible to use this benefit after sacrificing so much, that we have majority of those funds for those purposes. And of course, we can come back and reallocate for their further descendants.
That would be my recommendation, is that if we start with that at some point down the road, we may want to come back and look at it again and reallocate. Because if history tells us anything, from the scholarship's inception, it has been particularly slow. And those students that were directed, those of us that were directly affected and shut out of school, we're dying off. And so there are fewer of us. So I would suggest that if we set a specific dollar amount to be set aside, that we be able to come back at some point down the road, look at it again, and reallocate the money.
Oh, yeah, we can always reallocate.
Yeah.
Now, what about a timeline? It's late we're meeting relatively late. And so at what point do we want to begin to start allocating scholarships? I mean, do we want to do this for the next, because don't be looking at me like that. Because if we're talking about the next academic year, that means that we have to get this information out, get applications in, review these applications, and award them. If we're
Madam
talking
Chair.
about the next academic year.
Madam Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
how about if we take the current status of our directly impacted folks and continue on, and then the descendants would go into effect in 2024? Because that's a lot of work, and I don't know what staff already has to do, but that's not, not just from the standpoint of processing the application, but we also have to get the word out. And I think it's incumbent upon everybody on this committee to use their influence to get the word out about the ability or the existence of the fund, and that kind of like we're back in full swing again. And so those descendants have the opportunity to apply. And then next year, the directly impacted
2024,
have the-
2025.
Right, 2024, 2025 for descendants.
Okay,
And then we keep the remaining program, the existing program as it is with whatever the current deadlines are and all that. And then you all in staff can get us something cute and visual and that we can put out in maybe newsletters and on social media and things of that nature that let folks know that this is something that is available. And that might help in that part of getting those directly affected more information.
you getting all this, Lily? Okay. And you got the amounts, and what about the need-based issue?
Preference to need-based?
For the descendants,
For the descendants.
my preference would be to consider need-based, so that for those who have more need, we're not set at a finite amount, if that makes sense.
Could we draft something as it relates to the criteria for going forward? Could we come up with something as it relates to what the criteria would be for descendants?
Madam Chair, yes, staff can put together some proposed policies that the committee can consider next time it meets.
Okay.
I think you had a question.
Madam
Yes,
Chair,
ma'am.
I just have asked a clarifying question for Delegate Mondon King.
Yeah.
Correct? When you mention need-based and descendants, are you referring to grandchildren and nieces and nephews, correct?
Correct.
So those, I forget what the correct term is, beyond children. Yeah, there's a term for children, collateral. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, because my understanding is that the descendants and their children
Yes.
would be in one pot that would be considered for full tuition and fees as we're currently
Yes,
doing.
thank you.
I have a question. So are we, because we don't know how many folks that might be interested, we haven't gotten the word out, are we interested in suggesting an application deadline? That just gives us we do have one?
There is
isn't
a
it hard?
current deadline.
And it's a hard deadline, so if your information comes in after that, it's not eligible.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Unless we have no applicants.
Okay, are there any other questions on, we will have staff come up with drafting some criteria, and then we will, you can send it out to us, for review, and we can have some input into what that looks like, and send it back, and a draft, and so forth. And when we get back together, we're going to meet more often than 4 years later.
I wasn't even sure I was still on the board. We hadn't met in so long.
Yeah, it took us a while, but here we are. And so that we can get rolling fully again with this. And because this is an absolutely wonderful committee and doing good work. So, anything else we need to do before we adjourn here?
Next meeting.
Any of our wonderful public out there? Have any comments? Okay, all right, great. So do we want to set a next meeting, or we just want to poll for it next time around?
Before we get to that, I think Ken Woodley, I don't know if everybody knows who Ken Woodley is, but he was very instrumental in getting this scholarship fund started in the first place. But he has a proposal for a federal grant. Lily, do you want to address that, or?
Yes. Thank you.
Madam Chair, Ken Woodley, who did help establish this program, has applied for a congressionally directed spending grant with Senators Kane and Warner. And that would give more funds, put more funds in the scholarship fund. So that would be a way of extending the program, maybe indefinitely, if the committee wanted to do that. It sounds like it's a little late this year for them to award it, but it may still be possible. So if the committee did want to take a vote to offer its approval, we could draft a letter and send that on behalf of the committee if there were an interest.
So all we have to do is vote to draft a letter
Of support.
Draft a letter of support? Oh, okay, sure.
Madam Chair, yeah, I think in talking to him, and thank you so much, because I totally forgot that. But in speaking to him, we do have an opportunity to get in this year if we do draft a letter of support. And he has been he's worked very hard in getting that. So with that stated, I would like to make a motion that we draft a letter of support for the congressional grant opportunity to get additional funding.
I second the motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that a letter is drafted supporting our congressional officials in support of this letter for additional funding. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, all right. Thank you for that.
Yes.
So for our next meeting, we'll just send out a poll for our next meeting. If there's nothing further, we will be adjourned.